Captain Jiho gripped the armrest of his command chair as the wandering star drifted into what remained of the Sol system. 3 years of deep space exploration had shown him many wonders, but nothing like this. The tactical display painted a picture of absolute devastation that made his stomach turn. Where planets should have been whole, only broken pieces floated in the void. Mars looked like someone had taken a giant hammer to it, leaving chunks of red rock spinning lazily through space. Jupiter had lost most of its moons, and the gas giant itself seemed smaller, as if something had been feeding on it for thousands of years. But it was Earth that truly horrified him. The blue marble that ancient star charts described was now a blackened husk. Its surface was covered in a strange dark glass that reflected their ship's lights in unsettling ways. The moon hung in pieces around it, forming a ring of debris that caught starlight and twisted it into colors that shouldn't exist. "Commander Mina," Jiho said, trying to keep his voice steady. His science officer was the smartest person on the ship, a brilliant Veltari who had solved mysteries that baffled entire academic institutions. Mina's forearms danced across her control panels, her scaled blue skin shifting to a worried purple. "Captain, the energy readings are off the charts. This wasn't a normal war or natural disaster. Something did this deliberately, and it was powerful beyond anything in our databases." Lieutenant Do-hyun suddenly straightened at his communications. "Station." The young officer had excellent hearing, even by his species standards. "Sir, I'm picking up a transmission. It's faint, but it's definitely artificial. And, Captain, it's been broadcasting continuously for a very long time." "Put it." Through the main speakers, Jiho ordered. The bridge fell completely silent. Even the usual hum of the ship's engines seemed to quiet as the message began to play. The voice that came through was clearly human, but it carried the weight of ages. It spoke first in what their computers identified as ancient human languages: English, Mandarin, Spanish, Arabic, each repetition growing more urgent. Then it switched to the universal trade language that all spacefaring species used: run. Just one word, but it sent ice through Jiho's veins. The way the human voice said it wasn't angry or commanding. It was desperate, like a parent screaming at their child to get away from danger. Archaeologist Somin, who had been quietly studying the readings from her workstation, suddenly stood up. This was her first assignment beyond her home system, and she had been eager to prove herself. But now her face was pale, and her hands shook slightly as she approached the captain. "Sir, request permission to take a team down to the 3rd planet. I need to see what's left of their civilization. These humans, they weren't running away from something. I think they were trying to warn us about something." Jiho studied the young archaeologist. Somin had excellent instincts, and her academic record was spotless. But taking a team down to that dead world felt dangerous in ways he couldn't explain. "What makes you think it's a warning?" he asked. Somin pointed to her scanner readings. "Look at the transmission pattern. It's not random. It's carefully timed, broadcast on frequencies that would travel the farthest through space. Someone wanted this message to be found. They wanted whoever came after them to hear it." Chief Engineer Wonbin looked up from his station. "Captain, with respect, shouldn't we be taking this seriously? I've analyzed the destruction patterns down there. Whatever hit this system had technology far beyond anything we've ever seen. If humans were warning us about something, maybe we should listen." Jiho considered their words. The Wandering Star was an exploration vessel, designed to investigate mysteries like this. But something about this felt different. The broken planets, the strange energy readings, and that single word repeating endlessly through space. It all added up to a puzzle that might be dangerous to solve. "Commander Mina, what's your assessment of the planet's surface? Can we land safely?" Mina's instruments hummed as she ran deep scans. "The atmosphere is thin, but breathable with suits. Gravity is still normal. But, Captain, there are structures down there. Big ones. They're buried under layers of that black glass, but they're arranged in patterns, almost like the entire planet was one giant symbol." "A symbol of what?" Jiho asked. "I don't know," Mina admitted. "But whatever it is, it's huge. The patterns stretch across continents. It's like the humans turned their entire world into some kind of message or protection." Somin's eyes lit up with scientific curiosity, but there was fear there too. "Captain, please, We need to understand what happened here. That transmission has been playing for 40,000 years. Someone went to incredible lengths to make sure it would be heard. Don't you think we owe it to them to find out why? Jiho looked around his bridge at his crew. They were good people, all of them. They had families back home, dreams and hopes for the future. But they were also explorers, driven by the same curiosity that had brought them to this dead system. All right, he decided. But we do this carefully. Small team, full protective gear, and we stay in constant contact with the ship. If anything seems wrong, we pull out immediately. As the wandering star moved into orbit around the dead Earth, the transmission continued its endless broadcast. Run! The word echoed through their ship, through their minds, carrying with it the weight of an entire species' final warning. 3 weeks of digging through Earth's ruins had changed everything Somin thought she knew about death and sacrifice. Her team worked carefully through layers of that strange black glass, using precision tools to avoid damaging whatever lay beneath. What they found wasn't the aftermath of a battle. It was the remains of the most incredible act of courage she had ever witnessed. "Captain Jiho, you need to see this," Somin said into her communicator, her voice trembling with excitement and horror. She held up a crystal the size of her fist, its surface covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift when she wasn't looking directly at them. "It's a data core, completely intact. The humans built these to last forever." The crystal connected easily to their portable computers, and suddenly the dig site filled with holographic displays. Images of humans appeared, not the primitive beings the Kethvar had expected, but an advanced civilization that had reached for the stars with both hands. Their cities were beautiful, their technology elegant, their art breathtaking. But then, the record showed something else: fear, panic, desperation. "They called it the silence," Somin continued, reading through file after file. "Something from outside our galaxy, maybe outside our reality. The humans discovered it coming toward them, and they knew they couldn't fight it with weapons or run fast enough to escape it." Back on the Wandering Star, Tactical Officer Hyunwoo was having trouble sleeping. The archaeological reports landed on his desk every day, and each one made him more uncomfortable. He had studied military history his entire career, analyzed thousands of battles and defeats. "But this was different, Captain," he said during their morning briefing, spreading holographic documents across the conference table. "These humans weren't conquered. Look at their final transmissions. They're calm, organized, purposeful. These are the records of people who chose their fate." The data showed something incredible. In their final months, every human on Earth had worked together on a single project, not building weapons or escape ships, but something far stranger. They had reorganized their entire civilization into a pattern that covered multiple planets. They turned themselves into a living symbol, Hyunwoo explained. Every city, every settlement, every individual person was positioned exactly where they needed to be. It's like they made their whole species into one giant protective charm. Captain Jiho studied the patterns, trying to understand. The complexity was staggering. Billions of people had to move to precise locations, construct specific buildings, even arrange their daily lives in exact ways, and they had done it willingly, knowing it would likely mean their deaths. "But why?" Jiho asked. "What were they protecting?" Before anyone could answer, Admiral Yunji's face appeared on the main screen. The leader of the Kethvar High Command was not known for patience or superstition. Her scales were a deep red color that indicated she was annoyed. "Captain Jiho, I've reviewed your reports about this human archaeological site. While interesting from a historical perspective, we have more important matters to attend to. The Sol system contains valuable resources and strategic positioning. We are sending construction fleets immediately." Somin's voice crackled through the communicator from the planet's surface. "Admiral, with respect, I don't think that's wise. The humans left these warnings for a reason. They sacrificed everything to create some kind of protection, and we still don't understand what they were protecting against." Admiral Yunji's expression didn't change. "Dr. Somin, I appreciate your enthusiasm for archaeology, but we cannot base military decisions on the superstitions of an extinct species. These humans clearly failed to protect themselves. We will succeed where they could not." "But Admiral, Captain Jiho interjected. The tactical analysis suggests... The analysis suggests opportunity, Yunji cut him off. Advanced technology, habitable planets, strategic location between 3 major trade routes. We're establishing colonies immediately, and shut down that transmission beacon. It's interfering. With our communications equipment, the connection ended, leaving the bridge in uncomfortable silence. Within hours, massive construction ships began arriving in the Sol system. They moved with military precision, setting up mining operations on asteroid fields, construction platforms around dead planets, and communication arrays throughout the system. Somin watched from Earth's surface as the industrial ships began their work. Her archaeological team had found something else in the human records, detailed warnings about what would happen if their protective pattern was disrupted. The humans had been very specific about this. Don't disturb the arrangement, she read from an ancient human document. Don't break the circle. Don't wake what sleeps in the spaces between the stars. She tried to reach Admiral Yunji again, but her communications requests were denied. The construction continued day and night, bright lights blazing across the dark system as the Kethvar claimed their prize. Engineer Wanbin noticed it first. Subtle changes in the quantum readings around the construction sites. The fabric of space itself seemed to be reacting to their presence. Ancient human machinery, buried deep beneath the surface of multiple planets, was beginning to show energy signatures for the first time in 40,000 years. It's like we're waking something up, he reported to Captain Jiho. The human technology isn't just dead equipment. It's still connected to something, still serving a purpose. Young communications officer Do-hyun was picking up strange signals too. Not the endless run message that had been broadcasting for millennia, but new transmissions coming from empty space. Voices speaking in languages that made his translation equipment crash. As more construction ships arrived and began major excavation projects, Somin made her most disturbing discovery yet. Every human city hadn't just been arranged in a protective pattern. The humans themselves had been part of the pattern. Their final records showed people standing in precise formations, holding hands, speaking the same words simultaneously across the entire planet. They had turned their own lives into a lock, and the Kethvar construction crews were systematically breaking that lock apart. The transmission beacon that had warned them to run was finally shut down after 23 days of construction. The sudden silence felt wrong, like holding your breath underwater. In the quiet that followed, something else began to stir in the darkness between the stars. Something that had been sleeping for 40,000 years, held back by human sacrifice and determination. Something that was now slowly, quietly beginning to wake up. The first sign that something was terribly wrong came from the colony ship stationed at the edge of human space. Captain Jiho received the reports during his morning briefing, but initially dismissed them as stress-related incidents. Space colonization was hard work, and people often had strange dreams when adjusting to new environments. But these weren't ordinary nightmares. "Captain," said Medical Officer Hyejin over the comm from the colony ship New Dawn, "we have 47 people reporting identical dreams. Not similar, identical. They all describe the same massive shapes moving through space, bigger than planets, hungrier than black holes. The colonists described creatures that defied understanding, things that existed in the gaps between reality, feeding on concepts rather than matter. They consumed light, sound, meaning itself. In the dreams, these entities moved slowly, but inevitably, toward inhabited systems, leaving nothing but empty void in their wake. It gets worse, Hyejin continued. The dreamers are all starting to develop the same symptoms. Memory loss, confusion, and they keep forgetting words. Yesterday, colony leader Minjun couldn't remember the word for home. He knew what he wanted to say, but the concept just wasn't there anymore. On the bridge of the Wandering Star, Communications Officer Do-hyun was dealing with his own problems. For 3 days now, he had been receiving transmissions from coordinates that showed nothing but empty space on their sensors. "Captain, listen to this," Do-hyun said, playing back his latest recording. Static filled the bridge speakers, but underneath it was something that made everyone's skin crawl. Voices speaking in languages that seemed to twist in the air, words that their universal translators couldn't process, because they described things that shouldn't exist. The voices spoke of hunger, of emptiness, of the spaces between stars where terrible things waited. But worst of all, they spoke of awakening. Something that had been sleeping was beginning to stir. Chief Engineer Wonbin was experiencing the strangest phenomenon of all. Working on the surface of Mars, he had discovered that the ancient human ruins were coming back to life. Structures that had been cold and dead for 40,000 years were suddenly showing energy readings. "It's not possible," he reported to Captain Jiho during their evening check-in. "These buildings have no power source, no functioning technology, but they're glowing with energy that doesn't match anything in our databases. It's like the ruins are remembering how to work." The human structures weren't just randomly activating. They were forming patterns, creating networks of energy that stretched across multiple planets. Ancient human technology was reconnecting itself, preparing for something. Down on Earth's surface, archaeologist Somin was witnessing something that challenged everything she thought she knew about physics. Her team had been carefully studying human artifacts when their psychic specialist, Yuna, suddenly collapsed during what should have been a routine scan. Yuna was gifted with unusual mental abilities that made her invaluable for understanding alien technologies, but when she touched a simple human data crystal, she began screaming words that chilled everyone to the bone. "Things that eat light," she shrieked, her eyes wide with terror. "They're waking up. The humans were holding them back, but we broke the lock. We broke it." Somin tried to calm her colleague, but Yuna kept babbling about entities that existed in the quantum foam between atoms, creatures that fed on existence itself. According to her visions, these beings could unmake reality, causing things to never have existed in the first place. The most disturbing part was what happened next. As Yuna recovered from her episode, she kept forgetting things. First small details, then larger concepts, as if her encounter with whatever the humans had been fighting was causing her memories to be gradually erased. Captain Jiho was facing his own crisis aboard the Wandering Star. His navigation officer, Taehun, approached him with a problem that defied explanation. "Sir, we're losing star systems from our database. Not destroyed systems. Systems that are being deleted from existence. 3 days ago, we had detailed maps of the Kepler 442 system. Today, there's nothing but empty space where it should be, and none of my crew can remember what used to be." There, the phenomenon was spreading. Each day, more systems disappeared from their charts. Worse, the crew couldn't retain memories of what had vanished. They knew something was missing. They could feel the gaps in their knowledge, but they couldn't remember what had been lost. "It's like reality is being edited," Taehyun explained. "Someone is erasing parts of the universe, and we forget they ever existed the moment they're gone." This was when Somin made the connection that changed everything. Working frantically through human archaeological records, she found references to exactly what was happening. The humans had faced this before. Entities they called the Silence, beings that consumed not just matter and energy, but existence itself. "Captain," her voice crackled urgently over the comm from Earth's surface. "The beacon! We need to turn the beacon back on immediately." The humans weren't warning people to run away from something. They were warning us not to wake it up. The ancient human transmission hadn't been a cry for help or a warning about an enemy. It had been a desperate plea to leave their sacrifice undisturbed. The humans had arranged their entire civilization into a protective pattern, then given their lives to create a seal that would keep the Silence sleeping in the void between galaxies. But the Kethva construction crews had broken that seal by disturbing the human ruins, by shutting down the beacon, by mining and building throughout the system. They had weakened the ancient protections that humanity had died to create. Engineer Wonbin confirmed Somin's worst fears. The energy patterns in the ruins are accelerating. Whatever the humans built here, it's trying to reactivate itself, but it's too late. There aren't enough human minds to power the system anymore. As if responding to their growing understanding, space itself began to change around them. Stars flickered and went out, not dying but ceasing to have ever existed. The void between galaxies, which should have been empty, began to move with purpose and terrible intelligence. The Silence was stirring after 40,000 years of sleep, and the galaxy was about to learn why humanity had chosen extinction over allowing these entities to wake. In the growing darkness between the stars, Things older than time itself were opening eyes that could unmake reality with a glance. The ancient human warning echoed mockingly through empty space. Run. But now it was far too late for running. The only question left was whether anyone would survive long enough to become the next guardians, the next species to sacrifice everything in order to protect a universe that would never know their names. The first colony to vanish was Kepler Station, a mining outpost on the edge of what had once been human space. Captain Jiho received the final transmission at 0347 ship time. Colonist leader Minho reporting strange readings on their sensors, then static, then nothing at all. But when Jiho checked their navigation charts an hour later, there was no record that Kepler Station had ever existed. The coordinates showed empty space, and his crew couldn't remember why they had been expecting a transmission from that location. "Captain," Navigation Officer Taehyun said, staring at his displays with confusion, "I have this feeling we're missing something important, but I can't remember what it is." This was how the silence worked. It didn't destroy things in the way normal forces did, with explosions or violence or visible devastation. Instead, it erased them from reality itself, making it so they had never existed in the first place. The only evidence left behind was the nagging feeling that something was missing. Within 6 hours, 3 more colonies had been unmade. Within 12 hours, an entire star system winked out of existence, leaving nothing but a gap in space-time that made people's eyes water when they tried to look at it directly. "All ships, this is Captain Jiho," he broadcast on emergency frequencies. "Immediate evacuation of all personnel in the outer systems. This is not a drill. Get out now." But evacuation proved impossible. The ships that tried to flee found themselves being chased by something that couldn't be seen or detected, only felt. It was an absence that moved faster than light, a hungry void that consumed distance itself. The evacuation ship Hope's Dawn managed to send one final message before it was unmade. "It's not behind us, it's eating the space between us and safety. We can't outrun nothing." Down on Earth's surface, archaeologist Somin worked frantically through human records, trying to understand what they were facing. The ancient files described the silence in terms that barely made sense, but the more she read, the more terrified she became. "Captain, you need to understand what we're dealing with," she reported, her voice shaking. "These aren't creatures in any sense we understand. They're concepts given form. The idea of non-existence made real. They don't kill things. They make it so those things never were." The human record showed that the silence had been moving through the universe for billions of years, systematically erasing entire galaxies. They consumed not just matter and energy, but meaning itself. Languages would forget their words, stars would forget how to shine, and living beings would forget they had ever existed. "How do you fight something like that?" Captain Jiho asked. "You." "Don't," Somin replied. "The humans tried every weapon, every technology, every strategy they could think of. Nothing worked. The silence can't be destroyed because it's not really there to begin with. It's the absence of there." Communications Officer Do-hyun suddenly perked up at his station. "Captain, I'm receiving something. It's old. Really old. These are human transmissions from 40,000 years ago, but they're just reaching us now." The bridge fell silent as an ancient human voice filled the room. The speaker sounded calm but desperate, like someone recording final instructions while their world ended around them. "This is Commander Taehyun of the Earth Defense Force. If anyone is hearing this, then you've found our system and probably awakened what we died to contain. We couldn't stop the silence, no one can stop them, but we found a way to trap them." The recording continued with technical details that made Somin's blood run cold. The humans had discovered something incredible and terrible. The silence could be bound, held in place by conscious minds willingly sacrificing themselves. "Every human life freely given will strengthen the seal," Commander Taehyun's voice explained. "We're not dying. We're becoming the lock that keeps them sleeping. Our consciousness will merge into a barrier that exists between dimensions. Tell. Whoever finds this, we chose to become eternal guardians. Don't let our sacrifice be meaningless." The transmission revealed the full scope of humanity's final act. In their last days, every human on Earth and across their colonies had participated. in a mass ritual. They had positioned themselves in precise patterns, linked their minds together, and then voluntarily given up their lives to create a psychic barrier around the silence. For 40,000 years, the collective consciousness of humanity had been maintaining that barrier from beyond death, keeping the silence trapped in the void between galaxies. Psychic specialist Yuna, who had been quietly monitoring the growing disturbances in space-time, suddenly gasped and fell backward in her chair. Her eyes rolled back, showing only white, and when she spoke it wasn't with her own voice. "We warned you to run." The words came slowly, as if being spoken by many voices in unison. "But since you stayed, will you stand with us?" Captain Jiho realized he was hearing the voice of humanity itself, billions of human minds speaking as one from their eternal prison. They had been trying to warn the Kethvar away from their system, knowing that any disturbance could weaken the seal they had died to create. "The construction work broke your barrier," Jiho said, speaking to the human consciousness through Yuna. "We didn't know, we're sorry." "Sorry, not enough," the voices replied. "Silence wakes universe, dies, unless new guardians take our place." The terrible truth became clear. The silence was loose again, systematically unmaking reality, as it had done countless times before. The only way to stop it was for another species to make the same sacrifice humanity had made, to willingly give up their existence to strengthen the barrier. Around them, more colonies vanished from existence. Stars began to flicker and die, not from age or collapse, but from being forgotten by reality itself. The edge of nothingness crept closer to the wandering star, and Captain Jiho knew they had minutes, maybe hours, before they too would be erased from the universe. The human voices continued speaking through Yuna. "Choose, quickly. Become guardians or watch everything end. Some will show you how." Outside the ship, space itself was being edited by the silence. Entire constellations that had shone for billions of years simply stopped existing, leaving holes in the sky that hurt to perceive. The universe was being systematically deleted, and only one species stood between the silence and the complete annihilation of everything that had ever been. The choice that had faced humanity 40,000 years ago now belonged to the Kethvar: become eternal guardians, or let reality itself cease to exist. In the collapsed ruins of what had once been Earth's greatest city, archaeologist Somin made her way through twisted metal and broken stone to reach the center of humanity's final monument. Her scanner readings had led her here, to a place that seemed to pulse with ancient power even after 40,000 years. The altar stood in what had been the heart of the city, carved from a single piece of black stone that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. As Somin approached, her breath caught in her throat. The entire surface was covered in names, billions upon billions of them, carved in letters so small they could barely be read, spiraling around the stone in patterns that made her eyes water. "Every human who ever lived," she whispered into her communicator. "Captain, they're all here. Every person who was ever born, every life that ever existed. They carved all their names into this stone before they became the lock. The names weren't just carved randomly. They formed intricate patterns that connected to each other, creating a web of human identity that covered the entire altar. Parents linked to children, friends to friends, lovers to lovers. The entire history of humanity was written in stone, binding them together even in death." Above her, Captain Jiho's voice crackled through the communication system, filled with the kind of calm that only comes when all other options have been exhausted. "Somin, we need to get you out of there. The silence is closing in on all sides. We have maybe an hour before it reaches Earth." But Somin knew there was nowhere to run. She could see it through the ruined city's broken windows, the edge of nothingness, creeping across the landscape, erasing buildings and mountains and even the sky itself. Where the silence touched, reality simply stopped existing. On the bridge of the wandering star, Captain Jiho looked around at his crew. These were people he had served with for years, friends who had become family during their long journey through the stars. Representatives of 12 different species, all united in their exploration of the galaxy's mysteries. Communications Officer Do-hyun, whose quick thinking had saved them countless times. Chief Engineer Wonbin, who could fix anything and had never met a problem he couldn't solve. Medical Officer Hyejin, who had healed both their bodies and their spirits during difficult missions. Navigator Tae-hyun, who knew the stars better than anyone alive. "We have a choice to make," Jiho announced, his voice steady despite the fear in his heart. "We can try to run and let the silence consume everything, every world, every species, every dream that ever was. Or we can do what the humans did. We can bind ourselves to their seal and become guardians." The bridge fell silent as the weight of his words sank in. Through the viewports they could see reality unraveling around them. Stars were winking out of existence, not dying but simply ceasing to have ever been. The darkness between them was growing larger, hungrier. "What exactly does that mean?" asked Tactical Officer Hyunwoo, though his voice suggested he already knew the answer. Psychic Specialist Yuna, still connected to the collective consciousness of humanity, spoke in her own voice but with the weight of billions behind her words. "It means we join them. Our minds, our souls, our very existence becomes part of the barrier that holds the silence back. We don't die. We become something else. Eternal guardians watching from the space between dimensions." Engineer Wonbin was the first to step forward. "I've spent my whole life building things, fixing things, protecting things. If this is how I can protect everything that matters, then I'm ready." One by one, the others followed. Do-hyun, who had always been fascinated by the voices in the void, now understanding that he would become one of those voices. Hyejin, whose oath to heal and protect extended to the entire universe. Tae-hyun, who had guided them through countless journeys and would now guide them through their final one. "We'll need volunteers from all the ships," Captain Jiho announced, "over the fleet communication system. This isn't just about our crew. We need representatives from every species, every world, every culture. The barrier requires conscious minds willingly given, and the more diverse those minds are, the stronger the seal becomes." The response was immediate. Across the fleet, beings from 12 different species stepped forward. Veltari, with their 4 arms and scaled skin. Keth, with their crystalline bodies that sang in harmony. Marani, who thought in colors instead of words. Zephyrians, who breathed different gases but shared the same dreams, all of them understanding that this was not just death, but transformation into something greater. Down on Earth's surface, Somin placed her hands on the altar and felt the ancient power flowing through it. The names of humanity seemed to pulse under her touch, welcoming her. "I understand now," she said. "They didn't just die to create the barrier, they became the barrier. Their consciousness, their memories, their love for life itself, it all became part of the lock." As the silence pressed closer, the ritual began. Following instructions from the human archives, the Kethava fleet arranged itself in the same patterns humanity had used 40,000 years ago. Each ship became a point of light in a vast geometric design that stretched across the solar system. The transformation was unlike anything they had imagined. One by one, the volunteers felt their consciousness expanding, joining with others, becoming part of something immeasurably larger. Their bodies dissolved into energy, but their minds remained, growing stronger as they connected with the collective. Captain Jiho felt his individual thoughts merging with those of his crew, his species, and beyond them all, the vast, welcoming presence of humanity itself. Billions of human voices spoke as one. "Welcome, friends, welcome home." The silence, which had been moments away from consuming the entire galaxy, suddenly stopped. The barrier was whole again, stronger than before. 13 species now stood guard in the space between dimensions, their combined will holding back. The hungering void. New beacons activated across the galaxy, broadcasting the same message in 13 different languages. The human warning of run was now joined by the voices of the Kethva and their allies, all speaking in harmony. "Run. Do not wake what sleeps. Do not break the seal." But in the quantum foam between realities, Somin felt Captain Jiho's presence. Beside her and beyond them both, the vast chorus of humanity welcoming their new guardians home. They had become something beyond life and death, protectors of a universe that would never know their names or understand their sacrifice. The cycle was complete, but it was not ended. Somewhere in the galaxy, another species would eventually discover these ruins. They would find the beacons, ignore the warnings, and face the same terrible choice. And when that time came, 14 species would be waiting to guide them, to welcome them, to help them understand that some sacrifices are too important to refuse. In the darkness between stars, the Guardians waited and watched, eternal sentinels protecting a universe of infinite possibility.